from Jamaica's Prime Minister, Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Finance Minister Fable Williams, and more. Seats are limited, so register now at jamstockx.com or call 876-967-3271. That's the 21st Regional Investments and Capital Markets Conference at the Jamaica Pegasus. Tune in to Nationwide at 5, Tuesday, January 20, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Or catch our broadcast live on our YouTube channel at Nationwide 90 FM Live 2. Keep your station on Nationwide 90 FM. This broadcast is brought to you by the Jamaica Stock Exchange and Jamaica Broilers.
The people's champion. Our mission is love. Our vision is love. Jamaicans, for justice. The people's champion. Justice.
Happy Monday to our listeners and viewers. Welcome to another episode of Let's Start Justice. My name is Michael Jackson, Executive Director of JFJ.
And I'm Jade Williams, Policy and Advocacy Specialist at JFJ.
So just want to say thank you to all who are joining us via Radioland, to the YouTubers for their discussions. We read them when we can do a little bit of multitasking, and to individuals joining us elsewhere or tuning in after. We certainly appreciate your company and the conversations always about human rights and justice reform. Jade, today's topic?
Yes, so today we're talking about the future of jury trials, reform or removal. We've been hearing some discussions about considerations that will be had, whether we're going to retain jury trials in the future or not. So we'll be joined by a few experts to discuss this topic today.
Great. The week that was, I read an article in the Jamaica Gleaner, an op-ed, if you will, and I was so moved by it that I wanted to just read a few sections of that article. It was written by Janelle McEwen, and he is an economic consultant. And please go on Jamaica Gleaner and read it for yourself. It's a beautiful piece, and it's titled "Everyone is Waiting." And it's really about deferred responsibility and how we just wait on somebody to act. And we're almost in this state of paralysis in this country. But let me read some segments, just 2 paragraphs. Everyone is waiting. Government waits on citizens to comply, to be patient, to be better behaved. Citizens wait on government to act boldly, decisively, clearly. Parents wait on schools. Schools wait on homes. Churches wait on politics. Businesses wait on policy. Young people wait on opportunity, and opportunity waits on courage. In this waiting, urgency dies quietly. Public officials often explain paralysis with language that sounds reasonable: constraints, process, capacity, history. These words are not lies, but they are not answers either. Systems do not stall on their own. They stall when pressure is absent and consequences are negotiable. No institution drifts into irrelevance without permission. Citizens, meanwhile, speak the language of accountability while practicing the habits of exemption. We condemn corruption, but we excuse convenience. We demand fairness, but resist scrutiny. We want institutions to function properly while contributing daily to their dysfunction. This contradiction is rarely confronted, yet it sits at the center of our collective frustration. I wish I could read the entire article, but I found it so profound and so beautifully articulated, because sometimes we hear the excuses from the state, and yes, they sound reasonable, like procurement. And we say we should understand, but at what point as citizens do we say, yes, Minister, yes, Permanent Secretary, yes, we hear you, but we have been hearing you for far too long on this problem. We have elected you, some were nominated. When do you expect change? And as citizens, We hear, for example, at what is happening at the University Hospital, and I read the comments as a listener of Nationwide, and I hear, but what going up there, sir? Millions of dollars could have been utilized otherwise, but we ask ourselves the question, how are we demanding accountability? What are we doing differently as citizens to hold our leaders to account? We chastise the justice reform process as it being stalled. We criticize certain things, but yet still we're not turning up for jury duty. Everybody who know a doctor get a certificate. We're the first ones to pay a little money for convenience purposes. As I said, beautifully articulated, and I really urge us to go and read that article, because the purpose of it is that, again, deferred responsibility, lack of accountability, everyone is waiting. Janine McCowan, beautiful piece, and I hope it has resonance with others, as it certainly did with me. And again, really urge people to read it, because as citizens, we can't excuse ourselves from the accountability framework. We can't excuse ourselves from the snail pace at which legislation moves. We can't excuse ourselves from the corruption. We can't excuse ourselves, because if everyone is waiting, no one will actually make an action in a timely manner. That's my week that was.
Thank you for that, Mikhail, and thank you to Janine. Profound week that was for us.
And I apologize for the list. I just visited orthodontist. My apologies.
That's I'm sure we're fine with that. But thank you so much for sharing that, Mikhail. So we'll go straight into our right of the weekend or trivia question for this week. Our right of the week for this week comes from the Jury Act, and it speaks to qualification for jury duty. Mikhail just mentioned those of us not showing up, but to qualify for jury duty, a person must be resident in Jamaica. They must be 18 years or older, but under the age of 70. They are to be listed as a registered elector, or they are to be registered under the Revenue Administration Act. They are a Commonwealth citizen, not a Jamaican citizen, a Commonwealth citizen, and they can speak, read, and write English. So that is Section 2 of the Jury Act that speaks to how one qualifies for jury duty. Our trivia question for today is, if a person is on trial for murder, how many jurors are needed to hear their case? So if a person is on trial for murder, how many jurors are needed to hear that case? So you can respond by sending a WhatsApp to 2397583, respond on our social media pages at JA4Justice, or in the chat on YouTube on Nationwide. All right, so we are going into our fulsome topic, the future of jury trials in Jamaica, reform or removal. In January of 2025, the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, Honorable Delroy Chuck, would have introduced a bill to amend the Jury Act in the House of Representatives. The bill aims to increase the stipend paid to jurors from $2,000 to $6,000 per day or any part of a day that they serve on a jury, and it would also provide a $2,000 stipend for persons who attend jury duty but are not ultimately empaneled. At the same sitting of the House, Minister Chuck also shared the intention to establish a joint select committee to review the Jury Act, and particularly to examine the recommendations on whether jury trials should continue to be a feature of the court system. Now, this position to end jury trials has been supported by the Chief Justice, Brian Sykes, and at a swearing-in ceremony in January for new judges, he argued that the scrapping of jury trials would making greater use of plea bargaining would reduce the court backlogs, noting that there are approximately 3,000 backlog cases with 1,000 before the Home Circuit Court in downtown Kingston. Now, advocates like JFJ would have urged us against the removal of jury trials. We have continued to support the reform of the jury system and strengthening of the jury system rather than its removal. And our cause would have also been supported by cause from the then Director of Public Prosecutions, Paula Llewellyn, who said that the retention of the trials is important as jurors might have a streetwise nuance that the bench might not have. So we are joined by several persons to discuss this today. Anne-Marie Furtado Richards, who is an attorney at law and president of the Criminal Practice Committee of the Jamaica Bar Association. Jacqueline Cummins, also an attorney, and Mr. Matthew Hyatt, also an attorney. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Okay, good afternoon. So I'll start with you, Ms. Furtado Richards. If you could share with us, what are some of the challenges that we are seeing with jury trials that would continuously lead to this recommendation to see them abolished?
Well, certainly from the defense side, we're not necessarily saying that there is such challenge. Well, let me put it this way. For the Bar Association, our position remains constant, which is that we prefer a balanced or hybrid approach. So we are not supportive of doing away with jury trials. Currently, we have a hybrid position where we can have a judge alone trial or we can have a jury trial. So we continue to say that that is the ideal position. Of course, we are not blinded to the fact that, as the Chief Justice has said, you can't try away all the cases, right? So we agree as well that there is indeed a backlog of cases. And as such, they're trying to find means and ways in which it is that you can overcome that backlog. But certainly, our position is that doing away with the jury system is not going to alleviate those issues, because you have those issues that still prevail. In other words, if it is that you're going to have a trial, right? It might be shorter before a judge, but it might still, depending on the complexity of the matter, it might still be a long trial. So you're going to have matters not being readily disposed of in trials. I appreciate the position in terms of the reasons that, so I think one of the things that have been said as to having a jury trial or getting away with a jury trial and having a bench trial is for the fact of the backlog, right?
Yes.
I think that is one of the reasons that has been banted about as being the main reasons for that. But the issues that we have, right? So there are of course issues. For example, what we are saying is that the persons who are qualified to become jurors, you can expand that, because as it is, some persons are not qualified to stand as jurors. Also, we hear about the whole thing about civic duty. Persons are more easily willing to shy away from doing their civic duty. So again, introduction of civics in the primary level of school, so that kids, when they grow up, they don't think of it as a burden, but rather that they're doing something for their country and in the administration of justice. I hope I answered the question.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate that perspective. I just wanted to know if Mrs. Cummings had anything to...
Before we continue with some of the issues, if Ms. Cummings, though, could just articulate for the listeners and viewers, what are some of the matters that are heard by jury versus judge only, just so that they understand what already exists in law?
All right, good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me. Afternoon to your listeners. Every matter that goes to the home circuit court or the regional circuit courts, save and except matters involving a gun crime, which does not involve murder, or matters involving scamming, what we know as scamming, which is unauthorized access. Those matters are the only ones that are not tried by a jury. But as it presently states now, murders, rapes, arson, felonious wounding, wounding with intent, those serious offenses are all tried by a jury. Any sexual offense is also tried by a jury. And the choice is for the accused and the prosecutor to determine whether they want a jury trial or they want a judge alone to try the matter. If you notice, most of the gang cases, the parties, both the defendants and the prosecution have agreed to have a judge alone trial, and that's because of the complexity of some of the gang cases and the evidence and the length of time it will take to have the gang cases. So as it is now, every case that is a serious offense in Jamaica are tried by a jury of your peers. And I want to go in a little bit to tell Jamaicans about the history of how juries came about.
If
and
you
why
could
we
just
should
hold that thought for us, please, Ms. Cummings. My apologies. We're up on the break, and then we pick up with you and then get to Mr. Hyatt.
Draxall Creative Building Finishes is here. Explore Jamaica's best styles, bathrooms and kitchens in our brand new showroom at Unit 4, 14 Drax Business Center, Draxall Creative Building Finishes. Your beautiful finish begins here.
Are you ready to turn your sales and marketing skills into high earnings? Nationwide 90 FM is searching for business development executives to help us grow our business and build lasting client relationships. If you have experience across all stages of the sales cycle and possess strong communication, negotiation, and time management skills with a proven sales track record, this opportunity is perfect for you. Join our team and work with the top corporate brands, media agencies, and of course, our on-air personalities. Enjoy networking opportunities, professional growth, and competitive commissions. Ready to take the next step? Send your resume to hr@nationwidenewsnetwork.com today.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. We're discussing the future of jury trials in Jamaica. We are joined by Anne-Marie Furtado Richards, Matthew Hyatt, both attorneys at law, and Jacqueline Cummings, an attorney at law as well. Before the break, Mrs. Cummings, you were going to share with us a bit about the history of jury trials in Jamaica, if we could pick up there.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Williams. The Jamaica's legal system emanates out of England. England's legal system emanates from the days when kings used to rule, and everything would go to the king for a ruling. So if a crime was committed, you go to the king, and the king would say, off with their head. If you know medieval history, that is how it used to be. Then sometime around 1066 or thereabouts, the king, who was then King of England, decided that, okay, I don't know what's happening in Grandspin or in Mountain View, so I'm going to send 12 of my knights out to find out from people in Grandspin or Mountain View or wherever this crime was committed what really happened, and come back and report to me, and then I, the king, will decide what would be the punishment or if the person is guilty or not guilty. That's how it started. So from early medieval times, a wise enough king says, I can't of my own decide these issues. I need 12 persons to help me. That evolved into a jury. So jurors traditionally were 12 persons who listen to the facts and determine the guilt or innocence of a person. And all the judge does is guide them in the legal, what the legal rules of law are, and then once the jury decides, the judge will determine the sentence. So the importance of a jury is that understand that jurors are to be members of your peers. So if you live in Cherry Gardens, you don't want everybody who lives in Tivoli Gardens to decide your fate. You want somebody from Norbrook, you want somebody from St. Thomas, you want somebody from wherever to help decide your fate. You want an array of persons who know what you experience. Likewise, somebody who lives in Tallspen would need somebody who lives in similar surroundings to understand what it is they go through in life, to know whether or not that person is telling the truth or not. So you don't want everybody who lives in Spanish Town to decide the fate of somebody who lives in Linstead. You want an array of persons to do it. As it is now, juries in Jamaica, except for capital murder, are 7 persons, no longer 12. And we now allow majority verdicts instead of unanimous verdicts were the rule. So we have to understand, and I will quote what Lord Delvin said in a case in 1956. A trial by jury is the lamp which shows that freedom lives. Traditionally, it's the cornerstone of democracy and the rule of law in a country. So when a jury sits down and listens to the evidence and determines whether someone is telling the truth or not, that shows that people other than lawyers and judges have a say in our judicial system, and it needs to remain.
Thank you for that, Mrs. Cummings. I think I'd pick up with you from right there, Mr. Hyatt. What are your thoughts on, the proposal from the Chief Justice versus what your colleagues have been saying so far on the program?
Yes, well, I'm in full agreement with my colleagues. I mean, the system is and has always been an integral part of our justice system. And, as my colleague said, when you have a team of jurors, the collective wisdom of our peers is always superior to any singular mind, any singular judge that is sitting alone. And certainly there are concerns, even from the jurors themselves. Some jurors are in fear of reprisals. We have some jurors who might be sitting, and potential jurors who may say that, I'm not going to go to jury duty because I am going to miss out on my income that I'm making in the market. And so I am in agreement with the minister that certainly the fees that are being paid, that will be increased to 6,000 per day. It may be sufficient, but it is a start. And justice cannot come cheap. But expediency also can't replace due process. It has to start with members of the peers, and I'm in fear that the Parliament may meet, and yes, we may have a select committee set, and they may very well decide that, okay, to have this backlog cleared, we will just abolish the jury system. And we have seen in the past where we have had select committees meet, and we have proposed amendments, for example, to the firearms legislation, and we have mandatory sentencing by the Parliament.
Mr. Hyatt, just a follow-up question, because you raised it. One of our listeners in YouTube is asking, what protection can jurors get if it is that they're sitting in on a murder trial where there may be the possibility of threats and so on? Mr. Hyatt? We lost Mr. Hyatt. Mrs. Furtado Richards, if you could take that question for us.
All right. So, unfortunately, we're not like the some countries that they sequester the jurors in a protected place, so that in terms of when we speak about extraneous material, which is information outside of the court, that they're not permitted to be at all having access to it. We don't have those situations. However, I would say that I'm going to knock on wood and commend our justice system and even the persons who are before the court. Our country is not one where the justice system have been attacked, right? So unlike some other jurisdiction where the judiciary, the prosecution, even defense, and perhaps even jurors are physically attacked, that's not our history. And I pray and hope that it will continue to be our history, where it is that the jurors are able to attend, hear their matters, and move about freely as prevail. You're asking me of something that has not happened, right? And therefore I cannot, well, if it is that information is had that it is not safe, I know that the security, along with defense and the prosecution, would certainly be in dialogue, because it would not suit the defendant for anything to happen to the jurors.
Yes.
Right? Perhaps having heard the evidence, they're on their side. And it is that you're going to come out with a not guilty verdict.
Yes.
Right? So I'm not saying that we're not supposed to prepare for something like that. But to be honest, that has not been our history.
Yes.
Right?
And I'm happy you said that, because former DPP, Ms. Llewellyn, mentioned that before to indicate that our history and the circumstances that she has recalled in her years, that has not been for Jamaica. But I know attorney at law Clyde Williams indicated in a separate interview that even though we have not yet had that experience, and hopefully we won't, as you just outlined, perhaps in that joint select committee, we should still have it on the books as a just in case. We hope it doesn't happen, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't prepare for it. That was the view of another attorney. So just wanted to put that in the conversation. Over to you, Jade.
Thank you, Mikhail. So, as we are discussing this matter, it seems clear that most of us are in agreement that retention of jury trials is the ultimate goal here. We already have a hybrid system which is similar to what other jurisdictions, Commonwealth jurisdictions have. How can we strengthen this system? Because we are still seeing challenges. Jurors are not showing up for jury duty. We have an increasing backlogs in our court systems. What can we do to strengthen this system?
If I might, in your introduction, I saw you outlined all of Section 2, but I did not see any mention of the Schedule A, which speaks to persons to be exempted from being under jury duty.
Right.
And I think that is, when I looked at it, I did not realize that we had so many persons who are exempted. Obviously, judicial and government officials and their spouses are exempted. I think for judiciary and obviously for the government ministers, those positions, it is easily understandable why a judge or their spouse could not sit. But it encompasses healthcare professionals, which when one examines education and legal professions, other professions, when one examines the list, it is very all encompassing. And I believe, so we're talking about teachers at school teachers at higher educational institutions, teachers training college, students enrolled in any school, college, university, or other institution of learning, medical practitioners in actual practice, dental practitioners, veterinary surgeons, persons registered under the Nurses and Midwives Act. These are registered nurses and midwives. So when you look at the persons who are exempted, you want attorneys in actual practice. Again, for some of that, we understand, because I gave the example on another program that I myself received a notice whilst I was at the DPP's office to attend for jury duty. And I remembered at the time I would have, because they're using the voters list, they would have had only my maiden name. And I remembered going over to the Supreme Court and speaking to the criminal court administrator, asking how many Anne-Marie Furtados are in the island of Jamaica, right? So clearly we understand that if it is that you are practicing, you're in actual practice, exemptions can be made. Civil servants, many civil servants, ministers of religion who do not have a secular occupation, persons who are enrolled in commercial aircraft, operate commercial aircraft, masters or captains of vessels, so on and so forth. You have a long list of persons who are exempted. And the reality is that it is persons of means of straw who are usually called upon to serve. Because as you did open, persons who are in a particular position, sometimes lawfully, sometimes not, are not prepared to serve for jury duty. Of course, some persons in a certain particular circumstance, it might be challenging based on the level of responsibilities that they have to do jury duty. But remember, because it is a peer person within your peer, you want a cross-sector of persons being available. And I segue back to the increase. It has not yet come into effect, but I'm still heartened to hear about the $6,000 per day, because even as a Crown Counsel, and I'm sure my friends, Ms. Cummins, who is much senior to me at the bar, can speak about how in some circuits, judge, defense, prosecution have to all join up together to provide lunch for the jurors or even bus fares. So it is a real issue for persons who are in attendance, and the economic strain that they have to attend court. But what we would wish is that persons view this not as a chore, but as a civic responsibility to ensure that we talk about we want justice all the time, and justice cannot take place without you assisting.
Yeah. I want us, thank you so much, Mrs. Furtado Richards. We have to take the break in a few seconds. But if we could just stay for a few more minutes, I know you're all busy people, to just go through what could a further hybrid look like, if we may, and we'll pick up with Mrs. Cummings, and then Mr. Hyatt on that, and perhaps explore whether or not we should be looking at an increase further in that Joint Select Committee review that is based on the circumstances rather than a monetary value increase only. Please stay with us.
In times of loss, sharing information matters. Nationwide 90 FM offers professional obituary announcements, ensuring family, friends, and communities are informed with care and dignity.
It's been a long day.
Obituaries are aired weekdays at 8:30 a.m., 12:30 p.m., and 7:30 p.m. When it's important to reach people, let us help you do so respectfully. Contact our sales team today, 876-630-1210, or sales@nationwidenewsnetwork.com for more information. Nationwide 90 FM, informing Jamaica with care.
Tune in to Nationwide at 5 on January 20 from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. for the 21st Regional Investments and Capital Markets Conference at the Jamaica Pegasus. Discover opportunities and build connections that shape your future under the theme Capital Markets Fueling Economic Resurgence and Resilience. Hear from Jamaica's Prime Minister, Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Finance Minister Fable Williams, and more. Seats are limited, so register now at jamstockx.com or call 876-967-3271. That's the 21st Regional Investments and Capital Markets Conference at the Jamaica Pegasus. Tune in to Nationwide at 5, Tuesday, January 20, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Or catch our broadcast live on our YouTube channel at Nationwide 90 FM Live 2. Keep your station on Nationwide 90 FM. This broadcast is brought to you by the Jamaica Stock Exchange and Jamaica Broilers.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. We're discussing the issue of jury trials, and before we went on break, we got an excellent breakdown of the persons, the categories of individuals who are exempted, and individuals on the YouTube chat saying, boy, we have to, clearly this vast exception of personnel for the jury selection pool will reduce the availability of eligible selection, which is exactly the point. So another reform idea there. Ms. Cummings, to you, I pose this question. If we were to consider the Chief Justice's request, I know he, well, let me frame it better. Is there any other category of offenses that we could now say judge only? What further hybrid could be explored where we do not get rid of jury trials in Jamaica, but we look at the fact that we do have case backlogs? Is there any room for a further hybrid approach to be adopted?
All right, twofold. First of all, there are other offenses that can go to a jury trial. Under the Dangerous Drug Act, if you are caught with a certain quantity of cocaine or ganja or opium, it can be sent to the circuit court. Also, under the Larceny Act, if the crime or the amount of money that was missing or stolen is of a certain amount, it can go to the home circuit as well. So what has happened over the past is that successive DPPs have not brought them there. There are too many murders and too many gun cases to deal with, and they don't have time to deal with those other crimes. So they are not brought to the Supreme Court. They are tried in the parish court. But within the legislation itself, there is an ambit for those matters to be tried in the home circuit courts. But out of logical, what's happening in reality, they're not being tried. So there are other matters that can be tried there, but they're not being tried there. Secondly, this exemption list only exists in the Commonwealth and Jamaica. It does not exist in America. Barack Obama was summoned to jury duty. He had to go back to Chicago from D.C. to report for jury duty. Yes, after the first day he was exempt, but he had to go back. There are 2 lawyers who sat on the jury who heard the current president's case, criminal case. 2 lawyers were jurors in that case. There's absolutely no reason why we must have an exemption clause at all in Jamaica.
Remove it completely.
Completely. There's nothing stopping. Everyone who's employed is entitled to 2 or 3 weeks vacation leave. When you go for those 2 or 3 weeks vacation leave, what happens to your post? Somebody else does the job, no sir? So why is it for once every couple of years, every 5 or 10 years, you're someone to come and give your civic duty for 2 or 3 weeks? Somebody else is going to do your job, whether you're a nurse, doctor, teacher. When you're sick for 2 or 3 weeks, somebody does your job. So the excuse that started off is that you don't want to disrupt these things, but whenever those persons are in a job and they have to take vacation or they're sick, somebody else steps in and does their job, because what is happening is that the private sector alone are losing their employees to jury duty. So all you need to do, get rid of the exceptions. None. Everybody can be summoned for jury duty because you want the full pool as best as you can. Next thing.
And then it would be incumbent on the judge now to say, based on whatever you articulated at that point, you may be exempted.
Correct.
Yes.
I mean, if a surgeon comes and has a surgery to do the next day, of course you excuse him. Or a pilot has a flight to fly the next day, yes. But there are no reason why there must be exemptions anymore. Secondly, the reason why we have judges, and I agree with what the former DPP says about streetwise nuances that the bench does not have. I remember doing a trial one time and a witness says, I don't remember his name, but I've known him all my life and I only know him as John Boy. And the judge commented, oh yeah man, you know a man all his life and you don't know his real name. That means that judge, his circumstances, did not understand. In Jamaica, you go through life not knowing people's real name.
And is at the funeral you find out?
Exactly. So all of these kind of streetwise nuances, jurors have.
We lost Miss Cummings?
Yes.
Oh, and I was just enjoying that
Yes,
exchange. Mr. Hyatt, if we can switch over, I'm not sure if if you're able to pick up with Miss Cummings' point, if you were following.
Totally agree with Ms. Cummings. You know, there are persons who come from all walks of life. You know that there are some judges who have never taken the bar.
It looks like we're having some communication challenges.
Oh, the line is giving some challenges there. You know, I'm personally minded to agree with Miss Cummings, though. Not JFJ, no. Personally minded to agree with her. Miss Cummings, we have you.
I don't know why this line keeps cutting off, and there's a landline I'm using.
I think it might be our line and not yours.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, one line, Miss Michaela.
Yes, please. I'm not sure if you recalled where we lost.
Yeah, where I left off is that when you look at the cohorts of our judges who are brilliant minds, not all of them understand the streetwise things of Jamaicans. Because if majority of them were born in middle class, upper class homes, how many of them know what it's like for somebody who grows in an inner city? When I look back at the cohorts of our judges, I can probably pick up on hand how many of them you understand rural, deep rural country life or inner city life and understand what it is these people go through on a daily basis. It usually takes you have to walk in a man's shoes to understand where he's coming from. And that's why jury is important, to maintain that balance, that Jamaicans have a say in what's happening. 12 Jamaicans sat on Cartel's case, and 11 of them heard 6 months of evidence and came to a finding. And I understand the fear people were saying about the fear of being a juror. A majority of the time they are protected. I can tell you, those jurors walked from the courtroom, walked up the parade, and took the bus and went to their respective homes. It's only when the verdict was coming down now, they were escorted home by the police, because we know that there's a crowd out there. And I can tell you, current jurors they are given protection because they don't walk into the regular public entrance of the Supreme Court building, they walk in a different entrance. They're secluded when they come into the building. They don't interact with the prisoners and the witnesses and attorneys as used to be the case. So there is protection for them. So once we get rid of the exemptions, once we get rid of and have people understand it's your civic duty, because colleagues, friends have asked me to, Jackie, I'm asking you to find a reason for me not to. And I said, go and do your civic duty. And they come back months later and said, boy, I'm glad I did. It opened my eyes to know what's happening in the country.
Yes. And I'm happy that you made the point, for example, of the police escort, because I'm still seeing some comments here in the chat saying, what happens with a juror who is taking the public transportation. So I'm happy you made that point. Mr. Hyatt, happy to have you back. Please continue your own position on this issue.
Yes, I'm saying I agree totally with Ms. Cummings, because there are some judges who, for example, I was before a particular judge once, and upon hearing the allegations, she started to cry, and she went back to her chambers, and she came up for whatever the reason. But we're all human beings, and judges are human beings too. And you may have a situation where a judge alone is sitting, and she may have had a similar experience, or maybe somebody who she has known have a particular experience, and she might rule based on that particular bias and not necessarily on the facts, because we're human beings. And so when we have a collective set of persons who can sit, we rule out that issue of bias, and we can have members of our peer here. I must say that I didn't give it much thought, as Ms. Cummings had said, that we should abolish exemptions, but it is true, because crime does not only happen in the poor communities and below half-a tree clock. It happens at every door that it can reach, at Northbrook and Cherry Gardens too, and we all want justice. I do believe that we should all participate and have the opportunity to participate in jury trials where we can.
Mr. Hyde, because we lost you, I want to give you a further opportunity to tackle this issue for me. We are seeing the proposed increase from 2,000 to 6,000.
Yes.
The reality, though, is that a big enough percentage of our population is involved in informal economy, and they may not be able to access that 2-week vacation. Worse, as a civil servant, sometimes you can, when the vacation days then pad up, you can take out 2-3 years sometimes. Those in the informal economy, they do not have that luxury. Further, you may find that the one-day loss of income may exceed that 6,000 and could be so severe for an individual to lose. So while we welcome the $6,000 proposed, I recall the UK, it's not just a monetary value, it's also based on one circumstance specifically. What are your thoughts on the increase, and what else can be done in light of what I just indicated with the informal economy and so on?
I welcome the increase, but it has to be a balancing exercise. Yes, there are persons who may earn more than another, but when we talk about the financial impact, you're not there to be a juror to earn, really. Yes, there's an avenue for compensation, but it is also a part of your civic duty to play your part in the welfare of Jamaica and to ensure that you have a voice in how justice is perceived. It's a very ticklish issue, but from 2,000 to 6,000 per day, it is most welcome. I'm pretty sure the Minister and the Joint Select Committee will think of other avenues to ensure that potential jurors are in the courts. As my colleagues have stated before, in fear of reprisals, loss of income, and so on, those things are, especially the fear of reprisals, is almost non-existent in Jamaica, and the history has shown that, and we have sufficient protection. It is our duty as citizens to ensure that we play our part. And so, yes, you might not earn the 50,000 a day that you may have been earning in the market, but it's a right and a duty that I think everyone should participate in.
All right. Thank you so much. Last word from each of you, starting with Mrs. Furtado Richards, and then we close out with Mr. Hyatt.
There's a point. I don't hold any authority to speak on behalf of the judiciary. I just want, because some of the points that have been made, they're real. But at the same time, the note that I wanted to make, because I have to be balanced, right, is that the judges possess legal training. And so we are hoping that in terms of comments of, even though you're emotional, it being emotive does not automatically mean that you're going to be short in your responsibility of having been the judge of the fact, having heard the evidence, understanding what the law is, and utilize what the facts is with the law to come to a decision. Also, another note, as I said, when I did my research, it was said that when persons were arguing about in terms of for judges, information coming from the court stats unit was showing that the evidence is that jury trials produce higher conviction rates than bench trials. The rate that they were seeing in 2019 was 47% for jury trials, and bench trials in 2019 was 37%. So I believe, as I said, we go back to the hybrid. There are pluses and minuses. You have, as defense counsel, we have discussions with our clients, and we strategize as to, based on the circumstances, which avenue is the better based on their circumstances, whether it's a judge alone or a jury trial. But certainly we are seeing we prefer the hybrid at this point in time.
Thank you.
Ms. Cummings and then Mr. Hyatt.
I believe that the hybrid motion that we have currently needs to continue. I think we need to encourage more Jamaicans to participate in the process. I understand the rationale behind it, but I don't believe that the abolition of jury trials would have resolved that situation. I think the situation we have, is one of our culture. We have a cultural propensity for delay. And that is the reason why we have had this backlog develop in our courts. And it's increasing now with this chokehold that the executive has placed on the judiciary, whereby a guilty plea, you don't get a lesser sentence for guilty plea in certain circumstances. I think once we allow the process to be transparent and remain equitable, then both sides of the court, whether the prosecution side and the defense, should be the ones to determine whether they want a jury of their peers or a single judge to try their case. And that should continue for the rest of the jurisprudence that we have in this country. 12 or 7 persons is the best way to know whether one person is telling the truth or not. And when jurors retire to determine, the collective wisdom is usually better than a single person using a singular wisdom to determine those issues. And I think it's fundamental to our democracy that we continue with the jury trials.
Thank you, Mrs. Cummings. Mr. Hyatt?
Yes, there is a place for both bench trials and jury trials. I don't believe that jury trials should be abolished ever. It is certainly a tool that is needed for public trust in justice in Jamaica, and risk of, I'd say, perceived judicial overreach in certain circumstances. But as I said before, expediency can't replace due process, and there is a place for both of them. It is a matter of the complexity of the case. There are certain cases I would never use for a jury, and there are certain cases that bench trials is much better, depending on the complexity and the length and so on. So it is a balancing exercise, but should jury trials ever be abolished? Absolutely not.
Thank you, Mr. Hyatt, and thank you all so much for joining us for this discussion. We just heard from Anne-Marie Furtado Richards, Jacqueline Cummings, and Matthew Hyatt, all of whom are attorneys at law practicing here in Jamaica.
Thank you. Do we have to take the break, producer?
I was waiting to hear. Okay, no break. Okay.
All right, so we thank our guests. You know, they're just, this was such a beautiful topic. Expediency can't replace due process.
Yes.
Cultural propensity for delay.
Yes.
You know, when we listen to how our guests spoke and you hear the law, but the practical implications for jurors and the need to retain the hybrid system, because I think sometimes when we're having a conversation, there are some who may be of the opinion or the belief that it's all jury trials that we have. But I agree, and our position here at JFJ is maintain the hybrid system,
yes,
because there is a place for it. You know, the gang trials, for example, bench only. But there are some matters that we believe the jury still have such an important role to play. And I'm happy that it was raised that the conviction rates are much higher, you know, when we look at the jury trials. But I do recall, though, that the DPP former indicating that when it came to rape matters, not so much.
Not so much.
But
yes.
that's a sociocultural norm that we really do need to look at in terms of our attitudes towards sexual assault.
Yes, for sure.
But yeah.
You know, as I was listening to the discussion, one of the things that I think is, and also, you know, seeing the comments in the chat, I think one of the challenges that we have to face is that there is just not enough public education about jury service as well. Because, you know, the practicalities of, you know, you enter in a back room, or, you know, you will be supported by the police when it's time to give the verdict, or, you know, those kinds of practical things about service you may not know when you are going into it, and might that lack of knowledge, I think, might make some more persons apprehensive to fulfill that civic duty that they do have.
Which I think is the bigger issue for me. You know, I recall a young person saying to me last year, "Boy, Miss Jackson, I support JJ protesting, but it's not too hot."
Yes.
We got put something on IG and TikTok in support. And yes, there's a place for technology and how we use new media. But there is that removal of ourselves from democracy.
Yes.
And it's a broader issue of democratic participation that we need to tap into. That sense of service and our role in the process, and it goes back to Janelle's article, because I'm not sure if that strong civic duty is being embodied among young people, and I get the pushback from some, because this is it now. When you look at our leaders, I always use this line: to whom much is given, much is expected. So when we look at our leaders sometimes on TikTok, across out citizens, elected officials, you're not inspiring confidence for people to have strong civic duty and that strong sense of morality, that strong sense of giving back, because you're busy across people. Our attitudes in Parliament also inspires change. As leaders, myself included, you included, you're on TV talking, people looking on.
Yes, indeed.
What are we doing to inspire that sense of duty, service in our youngsters? We have a role to play. So tap the cussing on social media, leaders. We need to do better. You know, I recall, for example, on Labor Day, May 23, you see people are peeing sidewalk, you still have these things, you know. But I'm not sure if it is there as it was in the past.
Yes, I have to agree
People
with that.
treat it as rest day.
Yeah.
It's like they know you're the labor. Get up and do something. I don't know. We need to go back. We need to go back. And it's much more than, and I don't want to overly simplify something, because I hear we're talking about civic duty, but where I perhaps disagree with some colleagues, when you are losing that thousands of dollars days work, I don't know if I can tell somebody about civic duty for 2 weeks when they will not be working and they will not be earning. So I agree that that has to be a part of it. But I really do believe that the UK's model, with the cost implications for civilians, for citizens, should be
more of a needs-based assessment.
Needs-based assessment.
Yeah.
And we need to look at that list from I born. And I am 40 this year. My God, it's so frightening to think of, right?
Yes.
I have never, since I turned 18, been sent anything to serve.
In
and I would
fairness-
happily leave JFJ for 2-3 weeks and go down, you know.
In fairness, for at least a bit of that time, you were a student at a university. And you are currently a
Who know
teacher
that?
at a university.
But I wouldn't claim my exemption. Listen, I would happily go down to the Home Circuit Court any day you want a juror. I'm here, but I have to be called.
Yes,
So we have to
yes.
go into how we're exercising and utilizing those lists and so on. There are so many things, and for me, this is why personally and as an organization, there's disagreement with the call for the abolition of jury trials.
Yes.
Because I think we're not there yet. It's like you've gone to the extreme without doing the work to fix the issue.
Yes, I agree. I think that there, even when we looked at, some of the challenges that came up during the matter to deal with the officers in Mario Dean's case, and we would have seen, issues with the service of summons to jurors, for example. The use of the section where, jurors don't show up for trial, and there is a section there for you to
have the penalties
have
applied.
penalties applied, and the lack of implementation or use of that section. So I think it's a little bit unfair for us to say that the jury system is not working as intended when it is not exactly being used.
It's not being implemented
as is so intended, right?
Mhm.
So I think we do need to give it a better chance. One of the things I was heartened to see as well personally was to see when Justice Minister spoke to that other $2,000 that would be going for those persons who are not empaneled. Because I think another challenge that has come up before is that, you go and you are waiting and you are waiting and you are waiting, and then you are not empaneled, and that means that you receive no support, financial support for that day, even though you were there all day. And that would have been you serving your duty just by showing up. Unfortunately, you were not previously considered for that kind of financial support. So I am heartened to see that provision being considered in this new bill.
Yeah. So just to indicate that we welcome the announcement by Justice Minister. But, and I'm going back to Jalil's article, it
Yes.
is just so timely. Because it was tabled in Parliament, which is the move now, which we should laud. But I'm tired sometimes of hearing announcements without quick move towards the action of getting things done. So we hear, and this is and Minister, you have the support of JFJ on this. But far too often we hear about an establishment of a joint select committee to come. We are looking forward to that joint select committee being established in short order, because we have gotten the promise from our good Justice Minister before, and we have to have an opportunity to actually make these very good recommendations, some of them Justice Minister himself has articulated. And in the meanwhile, there is nothing preventing us from commencing that public education. Every single ministry have social media, have monies to put time signal and so on radio. Put the time signal, we say, go join jury duty. Accept it.
Yes.
And the time is brought to you by the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs so that people can start hearing these things, is my suggestion to the Minister and his good technical team at the Ministry. Some things can start in the meanwhile.
Absolutely. I certainly support that, Mikhail. We are basically at the end of the show. We have a minute left. Just to say that our winner for the trivia question today was News Commentator. The question was, how many jurors are needed to serve on a murder trial. I did mean capital murder, and the answer was 12. And news commentator got that question correct.
She started back 2026 with a bang.
Yes, she did. So we will respond to you via WhatsApp. Thank you all so much for joining us. I'm Jade Williams.
And I'm Mikhail Jackson. Have yourselves a very, very good week.
Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, Jamaica demand. Right to life, right to liberty. Out of many we are one in a Jamaica. Make it a better place for the boys and girls. Created equal by the creator. For equal rights and opportunities. No to unlawful detention and police brutalization. Class, gender, race or religion. We not tolerate discrimination.
To join the fight against injustice, contact us at 755-4524 or JamaicансForJustice.org.
The people's champion.
Join the National Cleanup and Volunteer Drive. Let's restore our communities one street, one home, one heart at a time. Sign up at supportjamaica.gov.jm. The time by the Office of the Prime Minister is
2:00.
It's Monday. Get over your blues. Or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
The E-Zone is here for you.
With the Stinger Honey Bee.
And Curry Boyatings
from 3 to 5 p.m. on Nationwide 90 FM.
We've got your entertainment news.
Then we want to hear your views. Why you say?
Jump in the mix.
Or the hot seat.
Don't miss our brain busters.
Or the crazy giveaways.
Let's talk fashion.
Send us your outfit of the day. Ooh, cutesy. Very demure.
Are you looking for love?
Come on one of our blind dates. Send your request to ezoneblindates@gmail.com. That's ezoneblindates@gmail.com.
And stay tuned for your confessions.
These are my confessions.
Share them with us at ezoneconfessions@yahoo.com. I mean, is this planet Earth?
Is it?
I don't know. Let me check. Either way, it's got a buzz.
And a bugger thing.
Ow! Ow!
Tune in to Nationwide 90 FM, the new revolution in media. Stay ahead of the curve with our